I was going to follow my own path. And my path consisted of, okay, am I better today than I was yesterday? How can I improve myself? And that's always been my philosophy. How can I be a better person tomorrow? What can I learn today that I can use in the future?
Hello, and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host, Carl Bucciolato. Let's get the next journey started. Our guest today is United States Army retired Special Forces Senior Sergeant Felipe De León Brown. Born in Panama, raised in the United States. Felipe served in the Army from 1967 through 92, a period of 25 years. After retiring, he was a high school teacher in the Florida public school system for the next 20 years, retiring 2019. He earned his associate's degree at Miami-Dade College, his bachelor's at Florida International University, and his master's at Penn State University. He was a communications specialist and teacher for the Green Berets and Special Forces during 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. He enjoys calligraphy, philosophy, reading, creative writing, and traditional Okinawa Kempo. We'll talk about that. He's a positive thinker and a true American patriot. His motto is, I've never felt the need nor the desire to compete against others. I've had all I can handle competing against myself. Please welcome Felipe De León Brown. Felipe, welcome to our show.
Good morning. How are you doing?
You know, it's a pleasure to have you on this podcast this morning because I'll just do a little background for the people who don't know. But I was having breakfast with my wife on Sunday, sitting in a little cafe in a diner, and we had just come from church, and the place was busy, lots of tables, and there was really no place to sit. And then all of a sudden we saw there was this one table for 2 people on by itself along an aisle. And they said it was open, so we sat down. Now, I believe that was direction because sitting diagonally across from me came Felipe De León Brown. And the minute I saw him come in and sit at that chair, I said, I'm supposed to talk to this man. And look at what I found out. What you are truly an American patriot and a hero. And it's the kind of things that we love to talk about on a show like this, where we talk about how people move through our lives and then they help direct us in one way or another. So before we get into all of the grown-up stuff, tell us a little bit about yourself as a young man or as a boy growing up.
Okay, first off, I don't consider myself a hero, but
I know none of you guys do, but you are.
Anyway, as Carl, you've mentioned, I am a native of Panama. I was born in Colón, and I came here. I was still a baby. My mom was still changing diapers, and I grew up in a very warm family. My dad was from here, and I spent quite a bit of time in my adulthood and my adolescence asking why my mom had married him in the first place. I think most of us can relate to that. Anyway, my infancy was in the arms of my mother, who spoke Spanish to me all the time. My grandfather, I used to enjoy, my paternal grandfather, I used to enjoy sitting on his lap and reading Baba the Elephant and Aesop's Fables in French. So I was able to read French at a very, very young age, and by relating the words to the pictures, of course. And my dad always spoke to me in Italian, and we would communicate in Italian. And my cousins remember that I had forgotten that I spoke Italian until they reminded me I was 20-some years of age. And I asked my dad about it. He said, yeah, that's all you spoke all the time was Italian and Spanish. So I thought that was cool. But I didn't start learning English until I went into kindergarten. And fortunately, in Columbus, Ohio, at that time, even though there was segregation and what have you here in the United States, in my neighborhood, if you could buy a house in that neighborhood, it really didn't make any difference what your ethnic background was. So we had neighbors who were Italian, Latin, or Spanish speaking, uh, Polish, you name it. They were in the neighborhood.
So you grew up in a melting pot.
Just about. I like to call it. I like to call it the human salad. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Well, we have our differences, but uh, when people are proud of their heritage, they want to hang on to their heritage. They don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I went into kindergarten and in the first grade, and uh, I had really nice teachers who understood. Okay, uh, we're going to speak English because that's the language that everybody needs to learn here in the United States, and no problem. But they were very patient with us, regardless of our background, and they didn't punish us or reject us or anything like that. So I was comfortable with that. Well, my dad had just finished his master's programs. I say programs because he earned both a master's of art and a master of science. And his primary focus was European history.
Mhm.
And he was looking for enough employment to be able to take care of us. And he found a position in Texas. And so he moved us to Texas. I couldn't understand why when we got to St. Louis, we had to get off of this railroad car
Yeah.
and move to, we had all kind of people on that car. And then we had to move to another car, and there was nothing except for African Americans. I couldn't understand that then. And here I was 6 years old. Okay, well, fine. Okay, it is what it is. And we got to, we arrived in Houston, and that was the first time in my life that I experienced what we now call the culture shock. I heard words that I had never heard before in my life, and with really what I considered then, I kind of still do, funny accents, Southern accent.
Yeah.
I heard the words y'all and ain't, and I had never heard those words before. But okay, it's the way that people talk here in Houston, Texas. Oh well. I spent that first summer um, getting used to the environment that I would later grow up in, and uh, my mother had in-laws in Louisiana, in the heart of Cajun country. I was sent there for that first summer to meet one of my aunts. Well, actually, I met just about all my aunts, and that had moved here, and several cousins, and I got along well, no problem. The little French I had acquired from my grandfather helped me in the middle of that.
Cajun country, you learned more French, didn't you?
Well, a dialect of it, yes. And so when I came back from there, I would speak with either a Spanish accent or a French accent, depending on how frustrated I became.
Yeah.
And I was sent to a colored elementary school,
Mm.
and that was another cultural shock. I was placed in the class in second grade with this teacher who had something against individuals whose names weren't English, regular English names,
Mm.
and individuals who didn't speak English like somebody from the South.
Yeah.
And about halfway through the first semester of second grade, my mom had to go to school and she had to straighten that lady out because she was being she was discriminating against me because of my accent.
Yeah.
And when I became frustrated because I wasn't able to pronounce an English word like she wanted me to pronounce it, she would pop me on the hand with a ruler. So that was my first introduction to, okay, life is not fair. All right.
Discrimination.
Yeah. And, but I managed to get through the second grade, no problem, academically. In the meantime, I was still learning English. Some of my classmates were still picking on me because of my accent. And I made up my mind that I was going to acquire a command of English that would put all of them to shame. And I think I was successful with that in my life.
Yes.
In the meantime, my parents recognized that, okay, I had no problem with Spanish. I had no problem with French, and they decided that they were going to introduce me to English spelling, learning how to spell English correctly. So my dad and mom invested in Scrabble. And I started playing Scrabble when I was 7 years of age, and I've gotten pretty good at it. I think I'm pretty good at it. My average score now is 400 and
Oh,
425, somewhere along
you
there.
get all those 15 and 10 chips and multiply them. I can bet.
I do what I can. Okay. One of my favorite things when I was in the military, I'm going to digress a little bit, but I'll try to stay online. One of my favorite things I used to enjoy doing when I was in the military is being challenged by an officer, even though I never became an officer, to a game of Scrabble and beating the socks off them. I really enjoyed doing that.
Payback is
Anyway, I know it's just great, you know. Anyway, I ended up in the third grade with another teacher who was, and she remembered me. I was 8 years old, getting ready to turn 8 when I went into the third grade. And when I came back from Vietnam, about a dozen years later, I came back from Vietnam after 1 year there, and she remembered me. And she remembered me how much I was a bundle to handle. I also met a couple of classmates that I would end up graduating from high school with in the third grade, and finished the third grade. And while I was in the third grade, I don't know when Texas started this program, but we had to take a test. All of us had to take a test. It was an academic aptitude test, I guess you'd call it that. And I ended up being placed in a class for what today they might call gifted students, because all of us who were placed in that class graduated in the top 20% of our class when we graduated from high school. And I didn't particularly like school at all. I didn't like the structure, if you will,
Yeah.
the regimentation. I didn't like it.
So you went into the army.
That's a different story. Okay? I didn't like the way that education was set up. More memorization and rote memorization than anything else.
Right.
And I'm one of these individuals. I'm a hands-on learner, if you will. So show me how to do it, guide me through it, correct me when I make mistakes, and let me see if I can do it by myself. And at the end of it, okay, how did I do? And you tell me how I did. How can I improve? And you tell me how I can improve, and I'll try it again until I get it. But this memorization is one of the things I've always had trouble with, memorizing. You're going to memorize facts, but you don't understand what you memorize.
And no reason for it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I did well in the fourth grade. Went all the way through um, the rest of my formal primary and secondary education with that same group of kids. Back in the day, we had homerooms in what we call junior high and senior high back in the day, which we no longer have. And I think we may seriously consider going back to that, but that's another subject. Anyway, um, I was becoming more and more proficient in English, and we would have spelling bees in the fourth grade, and I was always one of the last individuals standing on in the spelling bee out of my class. So that was something to hold my head up. At the same time, my parents, being both teachers, really didn't have that much money for music lessons or anything like that. But my mom loved to sing, and I love to sing too. And I ended up being a member of the youth choir,
Choir. Yeah.
and so I was singing church and around the house. If mom put on a song in Spanish, I would sing along with the song, and I enjoyed doing that. So I grew up, for all practical intents and purposes, bilingual. Actually, a polyglot, but Spanish and English are my strongest languages. And but in the meantime, even though there was discrimination in the South and segregation, I was also being discriminated against by some of my classmates because of my background, because of the accent that I had when I spoke English, because of my name, and because I wore glasses. You name it, kids all.
You were the target.
If kids can target somebody and the adults allow it, then the kid has to oftentimes has to suck it up, and that's not fair. In the meantime, my mom was trying to guide me in the way of Jesus of Nazareth, and so there was constant scripture reading in the house. She not only had her personal Bible, but she also had her daily devotional book in her bedroom. And I remember seeing them because one of the things I had to do when I was growing up was wax the floor, and that meant being on your knees.
Right. Right.
And we had witness. My mom liked the fact that even though I was slow as heck, and she would sometimes, okay, Christmas, because it would seem like it took me a whole year to do what I had to do, wash dishes or clean the bathroom or wax the floor. It was done right. So I grew up, okay, if I have to do this, I have to do it the very best I can. That was the bottom line. And my last year in high school, I ended up, I had studied architecture drafting for 4 years, but I had to give it up because of my vision. And it was just getting too challenging when we switched from homes and small businesses to high-rise buildings and so forth.
Yeah.
And so my senior year in high school, I had to take the mandatory courses, of course, but I had three periods left in the afternoon. A lot of kids took advantage of that to look for employment. My parents didn't want to hear it. I had a paper route. I was the custodian of the church my last 2 years in high school, so I cleaned up the church every weekend. And that was enough. I was a Boy Scout, and I was a member of the Cadet Corps drill team, and those were my only two social outlets. Really, I mean, I knew everybody on the drill team. I was in a leader. I was just a member of the drill team my whole 3 years in high school, and that was all right. One thing it did, it made me comfortable and used to uh, putting on the uniform correctly, making sure that everything was correct on the uniform, manipulating the weapon that we had, and they were authentic weapons then. They were World War II Duran rifles, and so I was used to that when I graduated from high school. I wanted to go into the Army, and Mom wasn't going to sign for me because I was 17 years of age. She wasn't going to sign for me. And she flat told me that she wanted me to go to college. So I went to college for a year and a half. And this is I guess you'd call it the second or third phase of my life. Went to college for a year and a half. I was in college ROTC. I went into Persia Rifles, and I was a member of their precision drill team. And leadership skills were already there when I went into college. So I was a sergeant my first year in the Cadet Corps, and Cadet First Sergeant my second year. But the rest of college, I was majoring in commercial art, but I had chosen the wrong school. And one of the principal professors, I don't know if he was the department chair or what have you, was bound and determined that I wasn't going to get any higher than a C in his classes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, in college, Carl, that if you are majoring in a specific field, if you don't earn a B or above, if you don't receive a B or above, I say receive because a lot of students, I question them having earned the grades that they did earn. But in my case, I wasn't going to earn anything higher than a C. He had already
Which means you'd never practiced in that field. No one would ever hire you.
that exactly.
Right.
And I became very disillusioned.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the military was pulling me. And I had studied philosophy and humanities at home with my dad. He insisted that I would have a strong educational background in spite of the dumbing down of America that was going on at that time, in spite of that. So he and Mom invested in great books of the Western world, and that was comprised, I would say, 90% of my education when I was growing up. So I went into
I had
college.
those books. I know those books.
I still have them.
Yeah.
And if you look here, let me see if I can bring you look here behind me where my finger's pointing.
Yeah.
That's 1950s great books of the Western world.
Yeah.
This is where I learned the Constitution of the United States. Dad was strong on that. This is where I learned all the different philosophies in the world. And I asked my dad one day, I said, Dad, what's the difference between philosophy and religion? And when he pointed out to me, I said, well, that makes all the sense in the world. And by the time I left high school, I was so frustrated, so immensely frustrated and disillusioned with religion, organized religion, as it has been practiced in the world that I knew of here in the West. And I turned to the religions of the East and started studying them. And the result of that, after more than 2 decades of looking at religions, comparative religions, I'm classified as a Roman Catholic. However, there are elements of Buddhism that I practice that most Roman Catholics don't really practice or understand, and most Christians, most Protestants, I should say Protestants, most Protestants don't practice or understand, because if they really followed it, then they would be even more disciples of Christ,
Hmm.
and some of them think they are. But anyway, my mom understood that I was going to follow my own path. And my path consisted of, okay, am I better today than I was yesterday? How can I improve myself? And that's always been my philosophy. How can I, Felipe De León Brown, be a better person tomorrow? What can I learn today that I can use in the future?
Sure.
And I'm not a party person. I've never understood why people feel that they had to go to nightclubs and what have you, and drink in a lot of cases to excess to be happy. That's never been my style, if you will.
Yeah.
So, I was, I've been, I've gotten comfortable. I became comfortable early on in my life of being alone, being able to meditate, being able to pray, being able to write down my thoughts, send letters from Vietnam to my mom, and I would write my mom at least once a week when I was in Vietnam. Postage didn't cost anything, so I took advantage of it.
Right.
There were times when I would go out on operations, and operations would last over a week, and so I couldn't write while I was on operations. But when I came back, Mom, I just came back from an operation. I'm still safe and sound. I haven't been wounded. I haven't been shot at. Well, I've been shot at, but I haven't been wounded.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get through this. So I dropped out of college. I got in touch with a recruiter, and I enlisted to be a combat medic, because the recruiter told me that because of my vision, because I was suffering from color blindness, I flunked that test, that I couldn't be infantry. I couldn't be paratrooper. And I thought, okay, well, I can't be infantry, but I can be with the infantry if I become a combat medic. So I'm still out there with them. And um, I went into basic training. Um, with After basic training, I was supposed to go to uh, Fort Sam Houston, Texas, to go through basic medical training, and then from there, who knows where I was going. While I was in basic training, the company commander, who was formerly enlisted and had served as enlisted, had been picked up to go to West Point, and had been commissioned out of West Point, and was assigned there in my unit as the company commander. The first time I saw him, I was impressed. He was his captain. He was a Vietnam veteran. He was a winner of the Silver Star, and he was an airborne ranger. And I said, this guy, this is. He said, "We're going to hell." I'll
You're
be
going to follow him.
I wouldn't have to follow him. I would be in the front. That would be the point, man. I mean, all of us. That's the charisma. That's the motivation they inspired with his example. Well, we had this inspection in the middle of the cycle, and I didn't know that my former professor of military science from college had written him, but the colonel had written him and indicated that I had the potential to be an officer. And I did not go into the Army to be an officer. I'll tell anybody that now. But because of my commander, um, my basic training commander, he talked me into applying for Officer Candidate School at the end of the 4th week. And as things worked out, instead of basic medical training, they sent me to infantry training, which is what I wanted to begin with. And after infantry training, while I was in infantry training, this Army surgeon asked me, when I was given a complete physical, asked me what I wanted to do as an officer. And I told him I wanted to be in infantry. And he mentioned to me that I could sign a waiver to not hold the Department of Defense responsible for anything that happened to me because of my vision. So I ended up going infantry officer candidate school. But about halfway through the course, I had it with this one second lieutenant who I don't think he even spent one day in anybody's college campus. And I punched him out. I reached my limit. Well, he pushed me to my limit and passed my limit. I punched him out. And a couple of weeks later, I took the Berets test for basic airborne training by my command commander. And the next thing I know, I'm on my way to jump school. In a jump school, the first day I had a little bit of a mustache I was growing. And a black hat, that's what we called the instructor because they wore black baseball caps, who inspected me. I had everything like I was supposed to look like. Sharp soldier, nice slim body, everything like I was supposed to look like. And then he started to step away, and then it hit him. And he came back in front of me and asked me, roster 17, what's that crap underneath your nose? I told him, I answered, roster 17 and mustache, Sergeant. And he said, we don't get down. And that was 25 push-ups, pushing Georgia towards China. For the rest of that week, for the rest of that day, every time they thought about it, the black hats would make me drop and do 25 push-ups. I lost count after the 300 push-up that I had done that day. My muscles were gone. I didn't have any muscles left yet. But I managed to get through that. I refused to quit. And at the end of the jump school, Medal of Honor winner then, First Lieutenant Charles Quincy Williams, pinned my jump wings on me, told me, welcome to the Special Forces community. Because he saw I already had the patch on. I was on my way there. And I went into Fort Bragg, which is where the school is, the course is. Almost drowned, but I managed to get through. I refused to quit. And 8 months later, I had completed the course. I had taken a aptitude battery when I first went into the Army for languages. I passed that, only missed one out of all the questions. I think there were 25 questions. I only missed one. So that wasn't too bad. And I was sent to Vietnam.
So I want to recap. You were born in Panama, raised in the United States by two teachers. Your parents were teachers. They instilled in you the desire and the love for learning, and your mother instilled in you the direction towards Jesus. And you were a self-competitor. You gained status by knowing that there are things that you could do that were superior to what other people were doing because you were disciplined in yourself. You went into the military, and now you're ready to go to Vietnam. And in Vietnam, it seems like cycles happen again. You become a teacher again. And
yeah.
So the idea of being a teacher is inbred in you throughout your whole life. In in the military, in Vietnam, in special forces, and then even when you come out. So that's an incredible story. So we have about 7 minutes left. So let's see what we can do with this.
Okay. About halfway through my military career, I was sitting in a classroom after the candidates had left. I was an instructor in the Special Forces School, and candidates had left for the day. And I was sitting in the classroom, and I started asking myself, well, what do you want to do after you retire from the Army? Because there's life after the military.
Right.
And I was reflecting on what I was doing. I was already teaching karate as an assistant instructor. I didn't have my black belt yet, but I love teaching the kids. And I love teaching the candidates. I really enjoyed that. And it just hit me. I asked God, God, if I'm able to stay in the Army and be able to retire, what can I do for you after I retire? And it just hit me. Going to teaching. I loved being in the military. That it wasn't a job for me, it was a vocation. And so when I retired, I had already made up my mind. I made a promise to the Almighty that I was going to do everything I could to keep. And I prepared myself to be a teacher. God made it possible for me to do so. And so I became a teacher. This was my second vocation. And every day that I would leave my home, going to school, I give the Lord thanks for giving me another day to teach, to serve Him as a teacher. And those 22 years I spent as a teacher were some of the most rewarding years of my life. I have a lot of former students who've gone on to earn advanced degrees and go into fields. A couple went into the military. They credit me for that. Several became teachers, and they credited me for that. And if it hadn't been for my wife passing away, I would probably still be teaching today. But I really and truly enjoyed it, Carl. And
I'm happy to hear that. You know, I have 3 teachers in my family.
yeah,
My sister-in-law, my daughter, and my granddaughter are all teachers. And my sister-in-law recently retired, and she was teaching for quite a number of years. And my daughter now is teaching middle school, and my granddaughter started at the high school level as a granddaughter. Imagine this. She's 6 foot tall, beautiful blonde girl. And the first day she went into the classroom as a teacher, she wrote on the blackboard, turned her back on the students that were high school kids that were looking at her, I'm sure. And she wrote on the blackboard her name. And underneath she said, "Black belt, any questions?" You had no trouble. She had no trouble. Now she's married and has 1 child and expecting a second one. But the question I have for you is, after 22 years in the teaching system, I'm sure you've seen some significant changes in recent years.
Yes, I have.
And how they teach in school and what they're teaching in school. Do you have any comments about that?
I think because of politics, basically.
Yes.
That teachers now really have their hands tied. They are they're not allowed to really be themselves to teach. Each teacher has his or her own style. Okay, and when you're allowed to be yourself, and you really look at teaching not as a job, not as a career, but in my case as a vocation,
Right.
and that comes through that this is my vocation.
Right.
Plus the fact that Jesus taught us to love.
Yeah.
Okay. And my former students will tell you, I'm being conservative in this. 95% of my former students, I believe, if they ask you, well, this Senor Brown care about you? And they would tell you, yeah, he cared. He was hard as nails. He was demanding, but he cared about us. Because as far as I was concerned, and I would tell my students this all the time, you are not authorized. I did not give you permission to fail.
Great.
You don't have my permission.
Great.
You come to class every day, you do the best you can, and you're going to pass this course. And you're going to learn a couple of things in the meantime.
So it must have been very difficult for you as an independent thinker and actor to resolve that your whole profession was under the control of a union that dictated what you can do and what you can't do because of their political persuasions. And that is a very difficult thing.
It's not the union, Carl. It's not the union, not here in Florida. Okay, at least not here in Broward County.
Okay, not in Broward County.
Okay, it's the politicians. Yeah. The union fought for us to have a limited class size, and in some of the so-called core curriculum courses, there are limits to the number of students you can have in the classroom.
Yeah.
But I taught Spanish, and 1 year we had a limited class size. But at the end of the first year, the former governor's administration, that administration had taken away our class size limitation.
Yeah.
There were things that were foisted on us that the union fought against, but we still had to adhere to these things. And this is the problem. The kids are being taught to test, but they're not learning really. They're not learning anything. Right. They're just learning. They're just being taught to pass the test. Okay, this is what you have to do.
Yeah,
and
get them passed and get them out. Get them passed and get them out.
Exactly, and that's why you have a significant part of the American public now who they're no longer taught cursive. Politicians talk about critical thinking. Okay, yeah. But the kids don't know how to. Young people nowadays don't really think critically.
Right.
And a lot of things that you had, that I had when we were growing up, you had carpentry, you had metalwork, you had auto mechanics, you have sewing, you had, in my case, architecture, mechanical drafting. You had a lot of fields that were being offered in high school,
yeah,
that are no longer offered.
Yeah.
And not everybody wants to be a scientist. Not everybody wants to be a mathematician.
Right.
Not everybody,
Well, so, should they be? The world needs plumbers and carpenters and mechanics as well.
Exactly.
We're a community of people, like, even like it says in the Bible, we're one body, but we're many parts. Each one of us has a role to play. And it's kind of odd when we try to push people into the mentality that they all have to have degrees that in many cases they can't even find employment for.
Exactly.
It's a very difficult thing. And I would say I am a bit biased about what I see happening in the school systems because, I watched some of these roving reporters on TV over Memorial Day weekend, and they were interviewing people on the beach in Coney Island. That's where I grew up. Okay.
Yeah.
The beach in Coney Island. And they were interviewing young people, looked like they were high school, college kids, clean cut high school kids, not gangbangers, but clean cut kids.
Right.
They couldn't answer any questions about the country. They didn't. They didn't know anything about history. They had no knowledge about the background or where this company, what this company represents and stands for. They didn't know because they'd never been taught. They didn't know how many states. One of them didn't actually know how many states there were.
I can believe that.
Oh, that's horrible.
My dad used to ask me questions. He taught social science and history in high school, and couple of college courses, humanities, philosophy, and history at the university level. And he wouldn't ask me, for example, what year did Napoleon uh, experienced his defeat
In Waterloo, right?
in Russia.
Yeah.
Okay, and where was that defeat? Well, I could tell you it was in Leipzig, which is in Germany. Well, why? He would ask me, why did he experience that defeat? And that was a critical thinking question. Okay, you had to think about, what happened here.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Right.
So I grew up being exposed to, you might know this, but why did this happen? How did it happen? And the kids are not. You hear the politicians talk about, well, we need to teach our kids critical thinking. Okay, give them the question and ask them the why and the how.
Yeah.
And on a test, instead of, okay, such and such a date, such and such a place. No, ask them, how did this happen?
Yeah. They don't.
And most of the kids can't do it.
Well, because most of the politicians can't do it. They're using buzzwords. They really can't do it. I saw something that was announced on the news last week. They were talking about holding children's lunch money
Yeah.
hostage if the school did not allow transgender participation in sports.
Yeah.
You were holding the children's lunch money hostage.
Yeah.
To me, that's despicable. That is something that we as a nation should never allow allow politicians to play with a younger generation like that, with their well-being. That's terrible. Anyway, I'm getting off on my platform. I'm not supposed to do that. We are run over our time, so I'm going to have to cut this down. I'm going to give you a minute to say anything you'd like to say. So whatever you'd like to say, you're welcome to say.
Okay. I didn't reach the goal that I wanted to reach as a soldier. But people who know me can say, okay, everything that Felipe has on his uniform, the rank that he reached, he earned it. And it's not me being arrogant or fooling myself, being delusional. I honestly feel that what I have, I earned it. Nobody gave it to me. And I think that it's by the grace of God that I've acquired the success that I've had in life. And people ask me, your wife's passed away. I went through a period of mourning, but more than feeling bad about it, feeling sad, I look at God brought my wife, rest her soul, to my life. We lived together for over a decade, and she still remains a part of me. And so when I think about her, I smile because of the good times that we had. And unlike my friend, I try to get him to understand that, look at the good moments that you've shared with Pam.
Right.
And thank the Almighty that He brought her into your life. And so that's how I feel. I've been able to connect with people, not like you, okay, but several individuals who've lost their spouses, and just let them know that there's a reason. We can't begin to understand it, and we shouldn't have to try to understand it. Just accept it and love one another. I tell my kids,
and I believe that when we lose people that we love, as long as they're alive in our memories and our hearts, we never really lose them. If you believe in the hereafter, they're just in a better place now waiting for us to join them. That's it.
Exactly.
So I want to thank you for being a guest on my show. I truly appreciate you and your story and what you represent as a man. And I appreciate the time that we've spent here together. And maybe we'll do it again sometime soon.
I hope so. Anyway,
There's a lot of story that I want to get to with you about your other experiences that I never even got to ask you about Okinawa Kimpo, so but we'll get into that. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. I hope you enjoyed the show. So I leave you with my common thought that I tell you every show. Tell someone you love them today. Thank you for tuning into the show. I hope that it resonated with you. It certainly did with me. And I hope it encouraged you to realize the true power of your story. As a reminder, new episodes will be released Wednesday mornings on your favorite podcast apps and also on YouTube as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn your notification button on to ensure that you receive updates on new episode releases. I'm grateful for your reviews and your support. The love is certainly felt. Keep it coming. You can reach out to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or stop by my website, toeverypageofturning.com. All links are clickable in the show notes for quick access. Do you think that you or someone you know may be our most inspiring guest yet? Let's hope so. Click on our contact page and get in touch on my website and share your story. I look forward to reading each one personally. My best-selling book, To Every Page of Turning, which was published by Mascot Books, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and many more popular book retailers. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Till next time, remember that every day is a new opportunity to write your new page in your incredible journey. And it is incredible. You're the only one who has it.